Still getting a feel for finding my way around Norfolk and finding good put-ins, but man, there are a lot of good put-ins here. Easy access, lots of access to salt water, super nice. And this place right here where I'm standing, you could launch from this dock, or you could launch from a boat ramp, which is really nice. I'm not a fan of docks. Here's why. These kind of launches from a pier like this can be a little tough on your upper body. You get scraped up climbing in. It's a long way down to the water. That's a good 2 feet. So that's a tough one. But I'm also not a fan of boat ramps, so this material or this concrete is poured in such a way that you get really good traction when you're trying to pull a boat out, but it can be really hard on your hull. So let your boat float when you get in, and be careful because boat ramps underwater are generally pretty slippery. That's why I don't like boat ramps. I don't like anything. I like launching from beaches. But that's not what I want to talk about. I spent the past 2 weeks, well, the past 2 weekends, teaching wilderness first aid courses, and both of them were, one of them was in St. Paul, Minnesota, one of them was in southern Jersey. It was really cold for both of them. And it was an exhausting weekend, but it felt great, or exhausting pair of weekends, but it felt great to be teaching again, particularly teaching WFAs. But it got me thinking. The WFA, Wilderness First Aid, and WFR, Wilderness First Responder, I was thinking about how if you worked in the outdoor industry, you used to have a Wilderness First Responder. Now a lot of people that work in the outdoor industry have Wilderness First Aid or WFA certifications, and I was thinking about who are those best for? Who is the WFA good for? Who is the woofer better for? That's what I want to talk about today. Let's go. The van is a mess after using it to teach WFA. I only used it for one course. So last weekend I was in South Jersey and drove there. The weekend before I was in St. Paul, Minnesota. In both locations it was really cold. It was like sub 10 degrees in both locations. It was cold. The van ends up being a mess when I teach out of it. Cold enough that there's still ice in this cooler after, what, 5 days, 6 days? So it's nice after a weekend in the van, even though I wasn't living in it. I slept in it for one night. But it's nice just to take a little time and clean it up and hope the road noise isn't too bad. But it got me working these two courses. It was nice to be working, to be teaching again after a long break, almost 2 years off of WFAs. It was really nice to be teaching them again. 2 back-to-back is more than I generally like to do, just because it's pretty exhausting. But it got me thinking about WFA versus WFR. And so it used to be, if you worked in the outdoor industry, you were a woofer. But that's not true anymore. Years ago, when I became a NOLS instructor, you had to be a Wilderness First Responder, which is an 80-hour course, and goes into a great deal of depth and detail. Ooh, an orange I didn't eat. A great deal of depth and detail on all of the topics. And you get more practice time, which is really nice, versus the Wilderness First Responder course, which is 16 hours. That's very different. 16 versus 80. And so, very different courses, even though the information covered in the two is pretty similar. You go into a lot more depth on the longer courses. So what happened? It used to be that in order to work in the outdoor industry, as a guide, as an instructor, you had to be a Wilderness First Responder. And then something changed. What changed? Boy, the van is a mess. What changed was that REI opened REI Outdoor School. And REI decided that its instructors didn't have to be wilderness first responders, that the 2-day, 16-hour wilderness first aid course was enough for their instructors. And so that tweaked the industry. A lot of other outdoor organizations said that the 16-hour WFA course was enough. And so I'm going to blame that on REI. I think that was, REI made it okay for companies to say that. And it costs a lot less to to get certified at the Wilderness First Aid level. It takes a lot less time. So I think what REI said was, it'll be a lot easier for us to get instructors if our criteria is Wilderness First Aid instead of Wilderness First Responder. But that made it okay for the rest of the industry to make that change as well. So we see in WFA courses a lot of people working in the outdoors getting their Wilderness First Aid certification for work. Which is, I don't think it's a bad thing, but I think if you really want to be on top of it, if you really want to get a better handle on things, because you get more time and more practice, I think the Wilderness First Responder is a better call if you're working in the outdoors. If you feel like you want a little bit more, a little deeper knowledge. So who is the Wilderness First Aid course for? Oh, I'm supposed to be cleaning the van, but I'm really tired. Okay, so who is the Wilderness First Aid course for? Well, if you're hiking the Appalachian Trail, I think it's a great course. If you are a Boy Scout troop leader, I think it's a great course. If you are, and I see this frequently, people show up at that course and say, I'm taking a WFA because I hang out with a bunch of people and we do stuff in the outdoors, and my friends do stupid things. I think that's a good reason to take the course. And if you are working in the outdoors on shorter courses, on day-long courses like REI offers and a lot of other groups offer, if you are within cell service, easy cell service, easy call to 911 if you have a problem on the edges of the front country, guiding or leading or teaching, I think the WFA is a good course. But if you want more knowledge, if you want a deeper understanding of why things work, on the Wilderness First Responder courses, we get a lot more time to delve into how systems work, how your body systems work, major body systems work. And so I think if you're doing that, if you're going deeper into the backcountry, if you're headed to Alaska for a month of paddling or 2 weeks of paddling, or Nova Scotia or Labrador, I think, or Mexico, where communication isn't as good, I think the Wilderness First Responder is the right call. But because it's more expensive, a lot of people don't go that route. And I think that's a little bit of a mistake. I think if you're really active in the outdoors, you should think about a Wilderness First Responder. It's more time, it's more money, but it's more knowledge. So the question is, does the WFA prepare you for when bad things happen? And I think the answer is, without a doubt, yes. And I think back to one of the first videos that I did on this channel was the Ryan and Sophie video. Sophie got a bad burn while they were 3 days from land. I don't remember exactly where they were. I'll put a link to that up here. And they did a really good job of dealing with a burn.
It's bad.
It's pretty bad.
Which can be super scary. They had limited resources. They were on a sailboat. They did not have a ton of water. And they dealt with it and did a really good job. And eventually, I think when they got to land, went to a hospital and had someone look at it, and the doctor was like, yeah, looks good, nice job. So the WFA absolutely prepares you. I do recommend to people to do a little bit more studying on their own if they're doing a big trip. Read the Knowles Wilderness Medicine book, or Any Number Medicine for Mountaineering is another good one. So I think that it's super helpful for most people. I think everyone should take some sort of wilderness medicine or first aid course. If you're not active in the outdoors, a first aid course is great. Everyone, there's no excuse to not take CPR. It's a world of preparation for when bad things happen. And the fact is that most people who take a wilderness first aid course use it on someone they love in the front country. So if you care about the people around you, it's a good thing to do. And as always, if you have questions about any of this stuff, leave something in the comments below or reach out to me via Instagram. This is a really good wilderness medicine book. This is the Knowles book. I don't say it just because I work for Knowles. It is actually a really good book. Here's a link to my first aid kit video if you have questions about first aid kits. Super popular video. It's how I handle first aid kits in the front country and the back country, so lots of information there. It's one of my longer videos. It's also one of my most popular videos, so check that out. Head over to Coffee, buy me a cup of coffee. That would be awesome. Hit like, hit subscribe, ding the little bell, and I'll see you outside. GoPro, stop recording. You're not a GoPro.